even one other person, whether it's the custodian, the teacher, the nurse, the assistant, whoever it might be, the librarian, are more likely to stay in school, particularly if they're having difficulties at home. So schools are about relationships. They're human places, and so when there's a lot of controversy on the outside, sometimes that has a negative, that can have a negative impact.
On the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yes, Judy. There's not a single resiliency person who is not able to point to an adult who was the key factor. In fact, some of the people like Stanley Crouch, people like Claude Brown, have said without that person there would have been no. Were there other issues that the three of you?
Well, I think philosophically, I think this is an important point. The DY, under Carol's leadership again, is that it's making it a safe environment for kids to learn and for adults to learn and to experiment and to find the joy in the learning, whether we're talking about our 3-year-olds that are in our preschool programs or the teachers or ourselves. I mean, we're constantly learning, and that's the environment we're trying to create for everybody, and I think that's a very salient point.
And you didn't mean just physically safe, you meant
yes,
feeling safe to learn, to take risks, to
right.
experiment. Yeah. Gloria?
I don't know. It's a complicated business, and I really wish it was as easy as a simple arithmetic problem. But unfortunately, it is human business, and we want to keep the humanity in our jobs, and that's what we strive for: supporting teachers, supporting students, supporting the community, trying to reach out to parents. I think that's one area that we would like to see continued growth, to make them feel that it's their take on things is important too. And we know it's a struggle sometimes to make ends meet in the economic times that we have here. We want to help you with that. We have to have that partnership going.
One of the things that is on my list that I think needs some clarification, because it comes up so often, and I'm not even sure I'm clear on it yet, is the relative benefits in terms of economics for a regional district versus a single district.
Obviously, this is a topic I've spent quite a bit of time on. I've given presentations about it and so on and so forth, and I've run the numbers a million times. One of the things that I think people need to think about are the educational advantages of a larger student population. One of the things that we are fortunate enough to have is because we do have the economy of scale. So a larger student body allows you to have these AP classes. I worked in a district that was probably about half the size of DY. Budget problems, just like here. And we had one AP class every other year. And it wasn't because we didn't have bright students who could take AP. We were at the adequate budget level, not a penny more. That was one thing. And the second thing was just the size of our student population. We couldn't maintain the staff to support that. So that's where sometimes our virtual high school can come in, because we can meet the needs of a lot of diverse interests and needs of our students through those. But we have an expanded program of studies because of a larger student population. That's an advantage of being in a regional district. Same with the co-curricular options. You know, you're not going to have a marching band if you have only 10 kids that can play an instrument. So with, in our particular case, with our students from Dennis and from Yarmouth, we have a significant number of music students. We also, since we have programs that start in the 4th grade and go up through, we have what the people call feeder programs that start kids playing instruments early and go on. You're not going to have that kind of thing in a single town district sometimes, unless you have a very big budget. You also have shared resources in terms of your staff, the professional development that Gloria was talking about. If one town has only 1,500 students, they're going to have a very small staff, probably about 100 teachers or whatever, and providing the professional development becomes not as cost effective as when you can join up with somebody else and you're doing it that way. The curriculum development work, if we were a single town region, Dennis and Yarmouth, there would be curriculum development work going on in Yarmouth and curriculum development work going on in Dennis, and they would be, both towns would be paying for the same thing. The three of us would have to be duplicated along with our business director. So you have economy of scale and financial benefits there. Shared grants. One town might not qualify for some of the grants that we actually qualify for together. Gloria and Judy have gotten some grants for some of our homeless education and for, like we talked about with the ELL. Believe me, we're so grateful for that $27,000, even though we can't spend it exactly the way we think we should be able to spend it. But individually, the districts might not qualify for those kinds of things. All the bulk purchasing and specialized services, you might have need for a teacher of the blind. Now, how many blind students are you going to have in your district? But if you are pooling your resources, that's going to be a great savings. And as much as we complain about the reimbursement from the state for transportation, single town districts do not have any reimbursement at all for the state, from the state for transportation. Our district in the FY10 year received $854,000 in transportation reimbursement. $555,000 of that belonged to Yarmouth that they would not get if we were not a regional district. So shared facilities, we've got one high school, you know, that we're paying for. I think the list goes on. There are really quite a few advantages of being a regional district.
I wasn't aware of some of that. That is critical information. We were assembling, we had a brief meeting SOS this morning, and we were looking at some comparative numbers, since knowing we're talking about budgeting. And we noticed that DY's average teacher salary is $61,064, which is more than $5,000 less than the Cape as a whole. And it's $6,000 less than the state as a whole. So from my perspective, that indicates that the money is being very well spent, because you have a salary lower than the Cape, lower than the state median salary, and yet doing the kinds of things we're talking about. Administrative costs, DY 2.2% of the budget, which is one reason you guys have to do so much administration. 2.2% of the budget versus 4.96 on the Cape and 3.4 for the state. And even with these, what you call economies of scale, we have a lower dropout rate than the state. We have a better performance on MCAS tests than most districts in the state. And college post-secondary attendance, I've learned, is higher than most districts. So it's not just how can you scale your economy, but what are you getting for it, which is the point the three of you have been making that needs to be addressed. I'm going to launch off on my own hook on a couple of personal statements that were floating around in my mind as I was thinking about this show. And it comes from being my age, and it comes from being 44 years in schools. The relationship of schooling to the success of this society is immeasurable. Martin Luther, of all people, said, quote, in 1540, where I would give $1 for defense, I would give $100 if I could only educate one child. Now, thinking back on entering kindergarten in 1942, PS 19, Yonkers, New York, working class kids, the opportunities that were available to us came almost entirely. We had family support almost entirely for what was available in the schools. And we moved through, and the schools introduced us things we would never have experienced. Music, we had required music from grades 1 through 8. Arts required from 1 through 8. Physical education, we had full-time physical education teachers in every elementary school. We had foreign languages. I was able to take 2 foreign languages. And it wasn't AP at the time, but there were advanced classes. And all of this, plus the co-curricular activities, plus the sports, enabled us, when we left the school, either to be successful in the workforce, which at that time most of the people did, or for those of us who went to college, was enabled us to go to college and get a scholarship to pay for the scholarship costs, which we couldn't have gone without it. So I get very concerned that in our discussions about budgets, which are necessary discussions, I get concerned that we lose sight of the fact that we're not just dealing with numbers and bookkeeping, we're dealing with future of young people, we're dealing with the future of the society. And nothing more than education guarantees the future of our society. So I'm grateful we were able to get some of the data we need to get, the information out. But we need to always keep in mind and have our citizens keep in mind that it is the school, it is the public school that is the key to America's future. And I keep reminding my graduate students, who are all teachers, 90% of American kids are in public schools. The action is in public schools. And so, you know, we ought not to be debating funding. We can debate how to use the funding, but we ought not to be debating funding. We ought to be providing as much material, as much resources as is necessary to get the job done. So that's my editorial reflection, reminiscence on the subject. 3 things. We do this because the costs for not doing it are enormous. The cost to society of dropouts, the cost to society of kids who don't have an adequate education is enormous. Secondly, we do it because kids would have opportunities lost, which could benefit the society. Horace Mann said in 1848 that by educating people, we are producing new wealth. We are enhancing. And finally, third, we do it because it is the moral thing to do and it is the democratic thing to do. So I think kudos to DY, kudos to all American public school teachers, but kudos to DY, and thank you very much for sharing with us
You're
today.
welcome.